really the kickoff to that stretch run here in these races, and no bigger one than right here with that Lindsey Graham, Jamie Harrison race.
You're right. This is really, it's coming up to be a quite the matchup here in South Carolina. Again, if you would have asked me 2 years ago, last year, even 6 months ago, would this race be as competitive as what it is now? I certainly would have been surprised.
Well, you know what's driving that, as is the case in politics, and maybe record breaking this time around in this race, is the amount of money being spent on the ads. Because you can't go on your computer, watch a video, you can't listen to the radio, you can't watch TV without seeing an ad for one of these candidates.
You're right. I mean, in the excess of $30 million is what Jamie Harrison has raised. Before it was if you could raise $7 million in South Carolina, you were doing well. $10 million was extraordinary. It was almost unheard of. He has put in excess of $30 million into his coffers. Jamie certainly is a very well-connected candidate. He's got close ties to Congressman Clyburn. He knows Capitol Hill well. What's interesting, too, about the pool of money he's raising is a lot of it is coming in from outside of the state. Jamie really has proven to be a formidable candidate and the first real challenger Lindsey Graham has had in quite some time.
What does that money coming from out of the state mean for us here in South Carolina? Because immediately I think a lot of people bristle up at, hey, you know what, stay out of our races. We got this.
Well, what this really does, the United States Senate really has become an international body. And it gains attention and traction among many, many, many groups. These are from businesses to other countries. It's interesting, really, the amount of attention that's paid on that particular branch of our government. Folks have an interest in the United States Senate. They want to see good candidates there. Lindsey Graham certainly has made an interesting name for himself, certainly in the past 4 years with his alliance to President Trump. That has turned a lot of people off. There are folks that are looking to flip the United States Senate, certainly, and they have identified South Carolina as being a place where their money probably would be a pretty good investment.
Well, you've seen that in other races where a Democrat has been able to take a spot that has been held by a Republican. We'll get to that first congressional district race here in just a couple minutes. Want to circle back to this debate. Who's under more pressure at this point going into this?
Well, so the pressure probably hangs a little more over Jamie Harrison's head than what it does Lindsey Graham. One of the issues that Harrison has to anyone outside of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and for someone who may not watch as much TV as what some of us do, he's still relatively unknown. So Harrison's mission now, certainly he believes that he's got Democrats locked down. He wants to appeal to the independents, the moderate Republicans. He wants to take positions that are appealing to him. During the debate, he's going to need to come across as being qualified, as being competent, and being someone they certainly can relate to. Lindsey Graham may be less so because he comes in number one as an incumbent, but number two as a front runner. Despite the fact that he may be behind in the money race, he still has the power again of incumbency, and the fact that a lot of folks really know his name as the senior senator from South Carolina.
What does that power of incumbency carry when it comes to a Senate race?
Well, a lot of good, because for the most part, we have a tendency in this country to reelect our incumbents, but it also brings some baggage to the table as well. We certainly have seen Lindsey do many flip-flops. Again, and this is not fake news, this is just a matter of fact. Number one, on President Trump, and most recently, his position on appointing a Supreme Court justice in the last year or leading up to a presidential election. That turns some people off. Now, for some in Lindsey's base, it probably will not make a difference. Can Harrison take a position that is more appealing to some of the folks that say, you want to know what? You are going back on your word. We can't trust what you're saying. And look past the fact that he's a Democrat, that certainly will play for some. For others, they're backing Graham because he simply just is a Republican. All other factors really just aren't going to make a difference.
So what you're saying is that Harrison is basically going to banking this race, and this race will hinge on whether there are enough Republicans who, for better or worse, however you want to say it, a lot of Republicans would say, "Man, I'll just have to hold my nose and push that button for a Democrat. It's
Uh,
happened in South Carolina.
Precisely. So the
Yeah.
folks that you go in and vote straight ticket, just Republican no matter what, he wants individuals to begin to break their ballots. You know, while you may support President Trump for whatever reason, Lindsey Graham just isn't doing it for you anymore. You're willing to walk in and actually vote for Jamie Harrison. That race becomes interesting. Again, polls always have a tendency to tighten the closer we get to the election. It becomes real interesting if President Trump in South Carolina begins to move within the margin of error. I believe you'll begin to see Jamie Harrison actually see a pretty significant bump if polls begin to tighten that much.
Do you see that happening? Polls tightening to
I,
that point where President Trump gets it within the margin here?
Polls will tighten. 2020 has proven to be a crazy year for a number of different reasons. Politics are interesting, and we really are looking at several factors that are unprecedented. We have a very unconventional president. We have issues from social unrest to COVID to, again, the latest issue to hit the scene, the Supreme Court vacancy. How all of that begins to play out, and I believe how Republicans react to all of those issues over the next 45 days, that's still going to have an impact on some voters leading up to November's election. But you've got to remember as well, we're really probably dealing with a small segment of the electorate. A lot of folks have already made up their mind. Certainly when we're talking about the top of the ticket, there may be some undecideds that are looking at the United States Senate race. But make no mistake, Harrison wants all of them. He wants the moderate Republicans. He wants the independents. He needs all of the Democrats. He wants them because he needs them to win.
So then how important is this debate as we circle back to it next week? Does this become a make or break time for both candidates, really?
Well, it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see who gets a bump coming out of the debate. Certainly for Harrison, this gives voters an opportunity to juxtapose the two candidates. And it will be the first time that he is on a stage with Lindsey Graham. It will be an opportunity for him to clearly articulate what his policies, the things that he's going to push for, what his vision is as a United States Senator from South Carolina, and say, you want to know what? If you're with that, I'm the candidate that you want. If you do support Lindsey Graham and these issues, then obviously your choice would fall with him. But again, he's not had an opportunity to make that case directly to voters because, again, he's a relatively new political candidate on the statewide scene. Again, not quite as known to folks outside the Democratic Party.
All right, let's go back to that race that you touched on at the beginning, and that is the 1st Congressional District, and that is Joe Cunningham, an incumbent, a Democrat in that seat, was thought to be unheard of as we went into the last election, but here he is now running for re-election against State Representative Nancy Mace. Speaking of money being poured into a race, right?
Well, you're right. And we've seen a lot of dark money now start to come into the 1st Congressional District. This is a seat that Republicans really want back. This is a seat that Democrats really want to hold on to. Charleston County, or at least the 1st Congressional District, it really is representing the change in South Carolina that Democrats hope that they can begin to realize throughout the state. So this is the first sort of proving or testing ground that Democrats are running up against in South Carolina to say, do we have staying power, or was that simply just maybe a one-time fluke that Congressman Cunningham got in there? That race is interesting because the dynamics play out throughout the entire district in the sense that the entire area isn't as competitive as what you will think. Congressman Cunningham probably will win Charleston County and the greater Charleston area. State Representative Mace will probably do well in places like Georgetown County, in Beaufort County. The question becomes, can Cunningham overperform in Charleston County to counteract the votes that Mace is going to get in places again like Beaufort and Georgetown? And then the flip side to that is, can Mace overperform in areas like Georgetown, like Beaufort, to counteract the bump that Cunningham is going to get in Charleston County? That race is really going to come down to turnout. Both sides are going to be very motivated, and they're going to be doing everything they can to get their voters to the polls.
How exciting is election night going to be? I mean,
Oh,
especially right here.
The days of where, it's called at 7:05 or 7:30 and folks are popping champagne or crying into the pillow, that's not going to happen here. There's several other elements. We've got COVID, we've got absentee voting, we've got still cases that are being decided now on whether you're going to need a witness signature or not. The state legislature has now opened up absentee voting to all voters in South Carolina. Again, just citing COVID as a reason. So how many folks now opt to mail their ballots in versus dropping them off in person? Do you get them back in time? It's going to be a wild, wild ride.
Can't wait. Looking forward to it. Thanks, John.
Always a pleasure.